What's up, guys, and welcome back to the Spoken Truth podcast. We've dived into the Western Conference and the Eastern Conference. These semifinals is going on right now. Be sure to check out all of our content on Spoken Truth. We're on YouTube. We're also on TikTok. Go follow us at Spoken Truth Pod. Also, go follow Chaz on Twitter and follow his platforms as well, as he mentioned previously in the previous segment. But Chaz, you have some quick takes that you wanted to throw out there. Go ahead and bounce those ideas.
Yeah, so obviously just so many storylines going on in these playoffs. We've covered them a lot tonight, but I just kind of wanted to get some quick hits before we get out of here. The first thing I had, and we talked about this exact scenario with the Mavs and the Thunder potentially being tied 2-2. But I'm going to ask you, and all these will kind of come down to who do you trust more? And in this one, I'll say, let's say the series is tied 2-2. Who do you trust more, the Mavericks or the Thunder, and why?
I'm going to say the Mavs. I had the Mavs winning this series. Um, I believe I said seven, 6 or 7, one of those. But I always believe it was going to go the distance. I did believe it was going to be a long series. I didn't think it was going to be a short one. I think when you have the scoring threat of one of the best backcourts and offensive scoring backcourts that we've ever seen in Luke and Kyrie, that I've always been under the impression that when it push come to shove, that this team will be able to not necessarily outscore you, but either one or both of them will be able to go off and they will be able to get you a game. As we always say, we go back, we say AI could get you one game. Allen Iverson could get you one game in the series. He was a one-man show, he could get you one game. I think the way that Luca has been performing, it has me a little cause to pause. And this series being able to go to distance and having them win it, I don't anticipate that continuing. And that's kind of when I'm banking on with, picking the Mavs to win this series. I believe that Kyrie has all the capability to carry this team while Luca's in his slump. However, I do believe that Luca will find a way out of this shooting slump, specifically the 3-point shooting. We've just been abysmal this series. I do trust him in figuring it out because I've seen him doing so many times in the playoffs where the defense is janked on him. He hasn't looked his best. I'm not talking about recently. I'm talking about the previous playoff games. I do think push come to shove that I trust that those two over the Thunder, but it's solely because the Thunder lack experience in that area. Um, Again, we talked earlier in the show about teams maybe it's just their time. I think with the Mavs is because the players that they have, it fits so well that it eventually we're expecting Luca to come out of the slump that he's in. And when that happens, then where's the series? Because if the Mavs are still winning these games, and it was hypothetically you said it was 2-2, and Luca's still in a slump, that favors Mavs because we were saying Luca's not even playing well. He's not even playing up to his potential. He's not playing up to the superstar level. So when he gets to that point, oh, the series is a wrap because they're basically playing him dead even at that point, and Luca's not even at his best.
Yeah, I mean, for a guy like Luca to kinda have, I wouldn't say a subpar game, but probably he
Mm.
was good last night and not great, and he still had 29, 10, and 7 or whatever it was. I mean, that just goes to show how great of a player he is. I think I was actually leaning towards Thunder. Obviously, I picked the Thunder in this series, and we talked about this scenario potentially playing out. I think with them having, game 5 and game 7 at home, and then also I think I just trust their consistency a little bit more. I think you can obviously trust SGA game in and game out. He's going to give you, 25 to 35 points. He's going to be really solid offensively. He's not going to turn the ball over. And he's also going to be great on the defensive end. A guy like Jalen Williams, he's going to give you about 20 every night and is going to be elite on defense. Chet Holmgren is going to make an impact, on offense, and then he's going to be an elite rim protector on defense. And then I think they also have a lot of role guys that you can trust, guys like Cason Wallace, and Isaiah Joe and Aaron Wiggins and Lou Dort. Those guys, they never really have games that they take over, but they're always consistent. I think the Mavericks have guys that can go off, like PJ Washington, but some games he'll have 9 and other games he'll have 29. And it's hard to trust that game in and game out. So in that scenario, I would say that I trust the Thunder slightly more. But like I mentioned in that segment, I do think either team could win this series. Anything else on that one before we move on?
It's all for me.
Cool. Then the next one I have, and we talked about this potentially being a finals matchup with the Celtics and the Timberwolves. Who do you trust more, the Celtics offense or the Timberwolves defense, and why?
Timberwolves defense. Um, I think what it comes down to is Porzingis his injury, Jason Tatum's subpar play. Um, I think what those two elements being able, being a hindering factor for this team really puts their offense in a situation where it's Jalen Brown, Drew Holiday, and Derek White or bust. And Jalen Brown, he can get you 30, he could get you 40, he could go off for 15 and a quarter. But the impact, and we talked about impact a lot. We talked impact last show with Steph and LeBron and how they could score 35, 40 points and their impact is not really felt on a game like it used to be. Um, Jalen Brown can score 35 points, but the impact that he has on the game is not felt. And that's no disrespect to him. But all points are not created equal. Um, and so with that being said, the Timberwolves, like I said in the previous segment, the best defensive game I've ever seen in my entire life. And I've only been on this earth for 26 years. I've been watching the NBA for damn near 12 years now. For probably more than that. I remember as a kid watching it, like as a like a little ass kid. And so I think, and that was the best game I've ever seen on the defensive side. I think for me, I trust overall the Timberwolves more than the Celtics.
Mhm.
And that's why if they played, I will favor the Timberwolves to win that series. Um and and to me it wouldn't even go 7. It might go like 6. But I think for me is that the Celtics have so many question marks. Jason Tatum, how's he going to perform on a day in and day out basis? Injuries to Porzingis. Is he going to be back in time? The coaching, it still bothers me a little bit because I believe if Udoka was still on this team, that this team would have already won a championship by now. But the coaching is a question mark. And so those are simply things that the Timberwolves do not possess. They don't possess any question marks. We know what we're going to get from this team. We know how this team play. We know how they've built their competitive edge on the defensive end. We know that Anthony Edwards is a bona fide superstar. Who will be the best? How when it comes down to who will be the best player in that series? Anthony Edwards. If the Boston Celtics were to face the Timberwolves, Anthony Edwards would be the best player in that series. And I trust him more than I trust Jason Tatum, more than Jalen Brown, more than the entire Celtics team. And so when it comes down to who do I trust, I simply trust their defense to be elite, which it is. It's been elite all year, and Anthony Edwards to be that guy. And with that combination, the Timberwolves, as you said before, they should be favorites to beat the Celtics.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Obviously, it's a little bit different. Sometimes shots just don't fall, and it's hard to trust an offense compared to a
Mhm.
defense because that's more effort based. But this Timberwolves defense is going to bring it every single night. Some games might be better than others. You might force more turnovers, or you might get more steals, or you might get more blocks, whatever the case may be. But they're going to have the effort any given night. The Celtics, we've talked about it the last few weeks, even kind of the last few years, they tend to settle. They get late in games. They take a lot of threes, even if they're not.
3 points or bust. They're a 3 point shooting team or bust.
Yeah, and guys like Jason Tatum and Jalen Brown who have the strength and length to get to the rim don't always take advantage of that, and that can kind of come back to bite them. So I would say this isn't me saying if they matched up that I think the Timberwolves would win. I'm not picking that until we have to because I like to see how the conference finals play out. Does Porzingis get back? Is Tatum playing at a higher level? In 2 weeks than he did the last 2 weeks? Whatever the scenario is. But if we're just talking about who do you trust more, the Celtics offense, the Timberwolves defense, which is what the question was, I'm right there with you. I'm taking that Timberwolves defense.
You ready for this?
Give it to me.
Even with Porzingis, the Timberwolves will beat the Celtics.
Okay, I like this. I need this. This is
E-
the matchup I need.
Even with Porzingis, the Timberwolves will beat the Boston Celtics.
Yeah, I could see it.
I just, I just think that this team, there's like I said, it's something brewing. It's something with this team. They're all playing together. They all enjoy it. They have established that this is the guy on our team, and everyone's okay with it. Everyone is playing their role. Their defense has been unstoppable. Anthony Edwards and that offense has been elite. We've seen so many things go wrong with the Boston Celtics over the last series and a half. Well, this series and last series, with them losing games in the way they've lost. And I'm not going to make the big deal of them losing to Cleveland the way they lost, or them losing to Miami in the way they lost. What I am going to say is that the Timberwolves are not the teams that they're playing. The Timberwolves are not the Cleveland Cavaliers. The Timberwolves are not the Miami Heat.
Right.
And when you're facing a team that has that dog, Jimmy Butler's that dog, but Jimmy Butler wasn't playing.
Mhm.
They have that dog on their team. Oh, even with Porzingis, I'm saying from Porzingis' standpoint, they need Porzingis just to beat the Knicks, in my opinion, just to beat the Knicks. If they don't got Porzingis against the Timberwolves, 6 games. And I know you don't want to call it right now because you want to wait till we get there. I'm saying we might as well hit fast forward and go to Timberwolves versus Boston in the finals.
Uh, yeah, and
Because I don't see any Eastern Conference team beating the Timberwolves. I don't see the Pacers. I don't see the Knicks. I don't see Boston. I don't see any Eastern Conference team. The Timberwolves will win the title. Only way they won't, and if they don't make it out the West. So I think that's where we are now.
yeah, I'm not mad at that take. I mean, I think Porzingis is could be the difference maker if we do see that series. And kind of all
Yeah.
season long and, throughout these last few weeks that we've been podcasting through the playoffs, we've kind of said it feels like Boston and Denver on our collision course. And now it feels like Minnesota jumped into that. And now it's Boston versus Minnesota that we're just kind of waiting to see. And I think that's going to be a phenomenal series. I mean, they played twice during the regular season, both overtime games. I believe the first one was in November in Minnesota and Ant took over down the stretch. They win that game, and then I think it was early January, I believe, that they lost in Boston, but it went to overtime. Two great games. And I think that would be a great series, especially if both teams are fully loaded. Um, Anything else on that before we move on?
Nope.
Cool. So I got two quick ones. They're both last shot. Who do you trust more? We'll say down one, 15 seconds to go, and you have the ball. Both of these are potential matchups that we could see in the conference finals. The first one is Brunson versus Tatum. Who do you trust more? Ball in their hands, down one, 15 seconds.
Brunson.
I think I'm right there with you. I think through these playoffs, he's proved that in those moments he's going to execute better.
Yeah. And I think the reason why it's so fascinating, the story with Brunson is that he's 6 feet tall. And so he's not the strongest, he's not the fastest, he's not the tallest. He just goes out there and hoop.
Mhm.
And you know, no one, even I mean, we could say that Philadelphia would have won that series if Embiid wasn't hurt, but it's the NBA. Things happen. He wasn't 100%, so I mean the Knicks won that series. Do I think the outcome would have been different if Embiid was healthy? Yes, I think the Sixers would have won. But we're here now, and so between him and Tatum, I don't trust Tatum. I don't know if you're getting the theme of this show today. I don't trust Jason. I don't trust Jason Tatum.
I think
Um,
you've said it in like 3 of the 4 segments.
yeah, I don't trust Tatum. Um, but we could definitely get into that a little later
Yeah.
of the reasons why. But you were a big Tatum fan, especially the last couple of years. I sense that you're even losing a little faith in Jason Tatum.
I kind of feel the way about Tatum that I do the Celtics in general, and that is you feel great about them, when they're in the third quarter and they're up by 15. But when all of a sudden it gets tight and they're settling for threes when they shouldn't be, it's hard to trust them in those moments. And I think we've seen throughout these playoffs that you can trust the Knicks. They might
Yeah,
not be as good on any given night because if the Celtics are playing at their peak and they're clicking on all cylinders, they're arguably the best team in the league. But we see a lot that they aren't playing at that level, and especially late in the fourth quarter. So if we're talking about 15 seconds left down by one, we've seen Jalen Brunson do that multiple times these playoffs. Now, we haven't seen the Celtics even have to yet because I think every single game they've played has been a blowout one way or another. They've lost two
but
games and they've won five, but not any game has come down to the wire. And so I think that's kind of
right.
to trust Tatum in those moments yet.
It's. I think the thing that is going untalked about right now is that the Boston Celtics should win the title easy. And the reason why I say that is because they dominated the regular season. And this is why we play the game, folks. And this is why we play the games. And this is why you hear people that can talk about the NBA, to study NBA. You hear us say we have to play the games. Because if you were just a casual, if you were a casual and you said they dominate, they killed everyone in the regular season by far. They led the Eastern Conference by what, 10 plus games?
Yeah.
But the second best team by 10 plus games? The Knicks. You would think that this team is overwhelmingly the best team on the planet in the NBA. And people still can still make that argument when they're clicking on all cylinders. I can't make that argument for them anymore. I do not trust the Boston Celtics. I don't care what I said this to you. Even off camera, I've said even I don't care if they break the Warriors 73-9 regular season. If they win 74 games and break that motherfucking record, I do not trust the Celtics until it matters the most. Until they are in a situation where they're competing for a championship and they win a championship, everything else is child's play. Everything, literally, everything else we've seen them done before. We've seen them blow teams out. We've seen them lead the NBA in 3-point shooting. We've seen Jason Tatum be a league MVP candidate. We've seen them win the Eastern Conference so many times. We've seen them go to the NBA Finals so many times. When are we going to say, yo, I know y'all young, and Jason Tatum, Jennifer, they're young. Yo, how many passes we gonna get him? I mean, you should have beat Golden State in 2022, but Steph Curry said none of that shit's happening and took over.
Should have beat Miami last year.
You should have beat Miami last year. You let Jimmy Butler and the Miami Heat just take your basketball identity away from you, and you look like a shell of yourself against that team. And then coming into this year, where everybody thought it was a collision course with you in Denver because you were overwhelmingly the best team in the Eastern Conference. Everyone have you ticket ball June 6th, started the NBA Finals. Boston Celtics versus whoever is in the Western Conference. We booked your flight ahead of time. And we shouldn't be booking your flight ahead of time because you haven't earned the right to have your flight booked ahead of time. And so, yes, on paper, they should be the overwhelming favorites to win the finals this year. But as I just told you in the last segment, I got the Timberwolves beating them. I got OKC beating them.
Ooh.
I got OKC beating them. Yeah. Yes, a fucking shocker for you. I got OKC beating them.
So you're taking
Denver,
whoever comes out of the West.
I think those three teams, Denver, OKC, and the Timberwolves will beat the Celtics.
Okay.
I think those three teams will beat the Celtics.
And I get your hesitancy with Tatum because like the question posed, late game situations, do you feel comfortable with him getting a great shot? I think the answer is no. I think on certain nights he'll get to his spot and he can hit that all game long, or he'll get a step on you, he can get to
He
the rim,
settles too much.
but
He
there's no
settles way too much.
exactly. There's no guarantee. I think with Jalen Brunson and other guys like that, you trust them that they'll get into that mid range. They might give you a pump fake, get you in the air, and they'll have a floater, they'll have a mid range, they'll have whatever it takes. You feel comfortable with that shot. I don't think we're at that point with Tatum. We've seen it in the past, but we haven't had to see it in a while. So he's kind of has to earn our trust again on that. I want to jump to a Western Conference scenario. Same question. Um, Another one that's a potential conference final matchup and late game situation. Who do you trust more, Anthony Edwards or Luka Doncic? Because that one, I think that could go either way.
That is a great question.
You kind of trust them both, right?
I do.
Yeah.
I do. If you had me choose, uh, that is so tough. That might be one of the best questions you've ever asked me. That is tough.
Yeah.
If you make me choose, I'm going to say Edwards. I want to say Anthony Edwards. If you make me choose,
Mhm.
but that could go either way.
Yeah.
I would like to hear your thoughts on that one. That's tough.
Yeah. I think in that situation, you feel pretty good about both guys. Um,
Mhm.
my heart wants to go with Edwards, but I think still at this point, I would probably say Luca,
Really?
just
Okay.
because I don't know, that's so hard though, because if that shot goes up with Edwards, you feel like it's going in, every time. Luca had kind of has that point where he settles too. We've seen him late game situation. A lot of the time he goes that a drive to the left, step back, and tries to hit that three, and that doesn't always fall. So
Yeah.
as I'm talking it out, I'm kind of saying Edwards, but Luca, he has that ability to get into the mid range, and he's so strong, and he's bigger than most players that guard him. That usually he can get a shot that's high quality. But man, my heart definitely wants to say Edwards. I think this one's 50-50.
I think for me, and I don't know if this would be a shocker to anyone, but I don't think it should. But actually, I trust Kyrie more than Luca.
Okay.
I trust Kyrie more than Luca. If we're talking a big game shot situation,
Yeah.
I think because Luca is too sporadic.
Hmm.
Luca to me, his jump shot is too inconsistent. When it's falling, it's falling.
Yeah.
But when it's not, I mean, he don't remind me a lot of Steph, but when Steph is cold, I mean, you could dump a bucket on that motherfucker. He can't warm up for nothing. It doesn't matter if he go dump a bucket on him and then he go into the hottest room, you get the heat on 95, 100, it don't matter. When that dude is cold, I mean, he can't shoot in the ocean. But when he hot, he's hot.
Yeah.
And so I look at that the same in Luca. When Luca is dominant, when Luca is on point, when Luca is hitting his shots, and you know when Luca's hitting his shots because he's laughing and shit, and he's shooting fadeaway threes and laughing at motherfuckers and just disrespecting the fuck out of these people. I mean, he did it to the Clippers, and man, it just, I mean, the Clippers, just go ahead and break it up, Clippers. Just go ahead and break it up because you just keep getting sent home by this man. How many times you gonna keep getting sent home by this one man? Like, how many times are you gonna get disappointed? I mean, he owns y'all, like he just do. Um, And it wasn't even unfair because the matchups the Clippers were winning, it was just literally a one man show, Luca. But he was torching them though.
Yeah.
I mean, this man was averaging 35, 40 points on his team. It's just crazy work. But I saw Paul George already at Cancun. Like he's already having the time of his life. So that's just wild. But anyway, anyway, I trust Kyrie more than Luca. But that is an amazing question though. It's really 50-50. I'm gonna say Edwards because I'm just this is my new favorite player, man. He is literally my new I don't know. Like,
If we take out like, if we're not talking the legends, Curry, Bron, KD, if we take out
mhm,
those guys, Edwards is my favorite player to watch right now, and it's not really that close.
yeah, absolutely. He's the youngest. I mean, he's my favorite young player to watch. I believe he has a really good shot to be the face of this league. When LeBron and Steph is gone. But I don't man, that is tough. That is really tough. Um, I will ask you this though before we get out of here.
Yeah.
Who has the? I mean, and I ask this question. I ask this question every year, and it's so apropos. It's so apropos for this year though because there's so much parity. I'm going to say Edwards, but who has the most to benefit from a championship? I have because the thing is, I could go with SGA. I could go with Edwards. I could say Luca.
Mhm.
I mean, to me, the obvious answer is Tatum. Who has the most to benefit? Because Tatum, he's been knocking at the door for a while. Edwards, SGA, they're just now starting. They just now getting here. They just now getting to the dance. So they are allowed a couple of mess ups, a couple fuck ups, a couple trips, and not, finishing the story.
Yeah.
But in your opinion, who has the most to gain and lose this season, this playoffs?
When you ask it like that, I think the answer might be Boston for both. I mean,
I do too. I really do think that too.
yeah, I
Go
mean, you
ahead.
you talk about a team that has been on this journey for the last 6 years, really. Going back to the
Mhm.
2018 conference finals, Tatum's rookie year, Jaylen Brown's second year, obviously a much different team, but that was kind of the first sign that this is a team of the future. And 6 years later, they've gotten very close, took the Warriors to 6, obviously conference finals, I think 4 other times during that span. Um,
Yep.
and have just come up short over and over and over. So I think they have the most to gain, but they also have the most to lose because we talk about it. If they do come up short, it might be time to make some drastic changes that they really haven't had to do to this point yet. So I will say it's Boston, but I think you got a good point that guys like Edwards and SGA and Luca and their respective franchises, if they win when they're not expected to, all of a sudden they jump to the front of the line. And that's a significant amount to gain if you win something before you're expected to.
Also will say Jalen Brunson has a lot to gain.
Yeah, he probably already gained as much as he could. Like,
Yeah, I'm saying if the Knicks somehow win the chip,
no, they won't.
just saying. I'm just
I would
saying
be
if the
shocked.
Knicks somehow win the chip,
Yeah,
if they somehow win the chip,
that would be
Jalen Brunson will literally go down as one of the greatest New York Knicks of all
wait.
time.
Yeah,
By far.
yeah,
And so I think there's some things that's out of reach there. Like that's probably one of them that's out of reach.
yeah,
But I don't know. There's so much parity in the NBA right now. We do not know.
yeah.
We're just we just riding. I mean we just disrespected the Pacers today. I mean it just like it
Hey, I said I
not
think they're gonna win game 3 and game 4. I just don't think they're gonna win the series.
Well, see, Cleveland just get no respect. Indiana just no respect. I mean, man, that's wild. Yeah, but then the Pacers are going home, and Cleveland y'all going home too. I'm just going to disrespect you a little bit more. But no, like, imagine Cleveland winning a championship with Donovan Mitchell. Like, That's huge.
Oh yeah.
Indiana winning. There's so much that can happen. There's so like because a lot of these teams never been here before, never been this far before. Obviously the Pacers have, the Knicks have, they haven't been here in a long time. But the Timberwolves, man, that's has to be the story of the playoffs, other than Denver just collapsing right now. Um,
Yeah.
but the Knicks also has to be up there as a story of the playoffs too. But Boston, I will have to agree with you. If Boston somehow loses the NBA championship, they loses the NBA finals, and they faced off against in quote unquote inferior team like the Timberwolves or the Mavs, who they should be favored against. If they lose that series, you have to break this team up. You just signed Drew Holiday to a new extension. I mean, you keep him potentially, but I don't know how many more times you go with this Jalen Brown and Jason Tatum duo. I mean, when is it enough that they can't get it done? They've been knocking at the door for the last 6 years, like you said. They've been, if I'm not mistaken, they've been to two NBA finals,
Just the one.
one, one NBA finals. They've been to four conference finals. I mean,
I got to get it done.
they got to get it done. There's just no other way to it.
Yep.
Is there anything else you want to add?
No, that's all I've got.
All right. Well, folks, this has been a very, very ridiculous. That's not a word, but we ridiculed a lot of teams today. I don't know. I don't know if you. I don't think you have, but for me, yeah. Because Denver, come to the front. Denver, yeah, y'all gotta go. Y'all going home.
Yeah.
We might as well go fish. Y'all might as well go fishing early, just like just like the Clippers did. They packed it up early. I mean, Kawhi packed it up before the series start. You say, you know what? I ain't even. It's the Mavs again. I ain't about to go through this again with Luca. I mean, Luca just have do you be seeing a smile on Luca's face when he faced the Clippers?
Oh yeah, he
He
loves it.
literally he enjoys he literally enjoys playing this team. That is so embarrassing. That is so embarrassing to be a Clipper fan. Like the Clippers are just catching strays on this show today. Like I don't know what y'all got a superstar who don't want to be a superstar. Y'all about to go into this new. That's wild. That's wild. I don't know what you're gonna do, Clippers fans. But anywho, you guys are not even in the playoffs. I shouldn't be talking about you right now. But I just had to say that because the Clippers, these fans are going through it. These fans are going through it. But guys, thank you for joining us on this episode today. We have a lot of fun on the show. But we do love talking hoops. We love talking about basketball. We love talking about the NBA. We do this shit for y'all. We do this shit for fun too. But we like putting out this content for social media and TikTok and for all the other podcasts out there that talk about NBA. You guys can't mess with us, honestly. I'm just saying. Everybody just catching strays today, man. I don't know what's in the water today. But anyways, thank you guys for joining us on this episode of Spoken True Podcast. If you like what we do, please consider subscribing to our podcast on YouTube. Also, please consider subscribing to our TikTok and follow us on TikTok at Spoken Truth. What is it? NBA Pod. It's Spoken Truth NBA Pod. Consider subscribing to our podcast and our YouTube channel. Also, follow my boy Chaz on Twitter at Chaz Post. Also follow him on your other. Go ahead and plug your other platforms.
Yeah, like I said earlier, you can keep up with all my content on dunkingwithwolves.com for all the Timberwolves coverage, throughout the playoffs. I had something go up before game 3, and we'll have something weekly as well throughout the playoffs. So stay tuned for that. And like Danny said, you can follow me on Twitter at Chaz_post23. But yeah, make sure you follow us over there on TikTok. We're trying to gain some traction over there. And obviously here on YouTube as well.